Susan is an eldercare specialist and certified senior advisor. She's worked in the senior healthcare industry for over 25 years, serving seniors and their families as Director of Community Relations with both assisted living communities and home healthcare agencies. In 2004, she started the New Hanover Healthcare Marketing Network Group with the goal of enhancing the lines of communication among all of the professionals who serve the elderly population in our area. For the past 12 years, Susan has worked with eldercare attorneys and their clients to assist them in finding the appropriate care or placement for their senior family member. In this role, she finds the proper level of care, whether it's a nursing home, assisted living, memory care, or skilled nursing, for each senior based on his or her specific needs, which can include their health, finances, location, etc. She functions as the liaison, coordinating the needs of the senior family member, their family, their doctor, and their facility or agencies to ensure a smooth transition for the senior to their new living situation. Welcome, Susan.
It was a really good synopsis of who I am and what I do. I lived in the Wilmington area for over 21 years, and I've worked in the senior healthcare industry for, I'm guessing, 25 years or so. I kind of fell into it. When we lived in Ohio, a job came to me that just sounded really interesting, working in an independent and assisted living facility as a Director of Community Relations and admissions. So we've been here for 21 years with a 3-year gap, and I'm telling you all this for a reason, with a 3-year gap of when my husband and I moved down to Florida to help my dad take care of my mom. I had already worked in the senior healthcare industry. I've worked with a lot of families with Alzheimer's, whether it was their parents or, and the title of this program is Mom and Dad Need Care, What Do I Do Next? But it could be yourself, your spouse, your brother or sister. We moved down to Florida for 3 years so I could be near my mom and dad. We lived across the street from them for 3 years because we had been going back and forth every 6 or 8 weeks, a 9-hour drive, to help my dad with cooking and laundry and getting my mom to doctor's appointments, and everything was just going so rapidly downhill that we decided we have to make a change. So we put the house on the market and we were down there for 3 years. It was a rough 3 years, and I'm sure there are caregivers in here that have all their own stories, but I wouldn't give it up for anything. It was something that I needed to do, something that I was fortunate to be able to do. My husband at that point was in consulting, and we could live wherever we wanted as long as he was near an airport. So we flew out of Gainesville or Orlando to go to work, and I was with my mom and dad. And I had to be there. My dad didn't know how to handle it. He didn't know. It was overwhelming. If you would know anybody with Alzheimer's or dementia, it's a 24-hour job. When I moved down there, a lot of things came up that my dad wasn't aware of that helped me with my job now to remind people that you need to be whoever it is that you're looking after, their best advocate. My mom was seeing 2 cardiac doctors, cardiologists, and I'm sorry, I'm not clinical, and also, pardon me, because of COVID, we haven't been out on the road doing this so I feel I'm a little rusty at this stuff. And I should back up a little bit. I work with Kara Gansman, the elder law attorney at Cranfield Sumner. Kara spoke here, I think it was right before COVID, so some of you may have heard her. And she talked about all the things that she does within her elder law practice. Wills, trusts, long-term care planning, that sort of thing. She brings me into the picture, as you just heard, when we have clients that need help finding facilities and services. And I'll tell you all about that. I'm going to take you on steps through that. And please, there's a microphone here. Interrupt me. Ask me questions as you think of them. Because that's what I want you to do. I want make it interactive and just throw your questions at me. So I hold our clients' hands through this process. Some people need a lot of hand holding, and it takes a lot of effort for us to get to the final resolve for them, whatever that may be. And some people just need an hour with me on the phone or an hour in person, and then they can run with it. And everybody has different scenarios. So back to my mom. We went to a cardiology appointment, and I asked my dad, I said, didn't we just see a cardiologist? Because it was the three of us together. Didn't we just see a cardiologist last week or a couple weeks ago? And my dad didn't remember, because my dad, who's passed away now, he was 87 when he passed away. At that time, it was probably early 80s. Whatever the doctor said, that was it. We do that. We get the prescriptions filled, we go home, and we do. My mom was being double medicated. So when this cardiologist said that he was sending her for this test and renewing these prescriptions, I'm like, wait a minute, because by now I was refilling her boxes and stuff, but I'm not clinical. So he was prescribing medications that another cardiologist was. And Lord knows how that could have ended up, but the doctor had this gasp look on his face and said, excuse me for a minute, and he left the room and he came back, and I said, yeah, we just saw Dr. So-and-so 2 weeks ago with my mom, and he said, you're right, and we didn't see the doctor again. There's just too many things that people take for granted. Be the best advocate that you can for whoever it is that you're assisting through this process. So when a client calls me, or the attorney's office calls me, and I work on an as-needed basis. This isn't something that I do 24/7. I'm not needed all the time. I have clients, sometimes 3 and 4 at a time, that I work with different needs of care and different levels of care, and how important is this that we need to do this now. And then I'll go for 2 months and I won't have a client. But when a client does need me, then I come into the picture and I do, and again, I'm not clinical, but I do an assessment to determine what kind of care that person needs. Are they coming from the hospital? Are they at home with a spouse? Are they living alone at home? What do they want? What do they need medically? Where do we start? And as the caregiver, if you're the person that's taking care of that person before I come into the picture, or somebody else that might be helping you, it's very, very overwhelming, because you don't know what questions to ask or who to ask them of. And that's where I can bring everything together for people. And again, sometimes it's a 45-minute phone conversation with somebody and they're armed with a lot of questions, and I can answer those questions and give them direction. But then sometimes I need to physically meet people and take them to facilities for tours or go to doctor's offices with them. So once I have a client, and again, everyone is different, and every story with every client is different, we determine what their needs are. If somebody is living at home and they want to stay at home, and they cognitively and physically can continue to care for themselves at home, maybe we need to bring in a level of care in their home, a home care agency, to meet some needs, not just the companionship part, but maybe somebody to take them to doctor's visits and whatever outings they are. And sometimes it's medical, they need medical assistance at home. Home care, and I'll discuss all of these things. Home care is paid for privately, unless you have some long-term insurance will cover that. And you're looking at minimally starting at $18 an hour and up to $25 and more if you need a nurse to come in. Because the caregiver, that is a non-medical home care agency, can't assist you with anything to do with ADLs, which is activities of daily living. Bathing, dressing, grooming, feeding, toileting, lifting somebody. But they can help with a lot of things around the house, like meal preparation, doing the laundry, cleaning, organizing things. So if we need a home care agency, then I'll help the client find somebody that, and there's companies companies and facilities that I will recommend and refer our clients to that I know well because of doing this in the Wilmington area for over 20 years. I know all the agencies, and I know the people that work at them, and I know the owners. I know the facilities, the assisted living facilities, and the memory care facilities, and the skilled facilities. And there are facilities and companies that I won't recommend to our clients because I wouldn't feel comfortable recommending a family member there. So if we need home care, we bring a home care agency in, and it's an ongoing process or an intake process that they determine what that client needs, and that may very well work for them for 6 months or 6 years. Everybody's different depending on what their health needs are. After home care, if somebody is at home and they've been falling and they have lots of times they have to call 911 because they need to be picked up because the spouse can't pick them up, and they have other health issues or there's memory care related issues, Alzheimer's and dementia, then we take a look at looking at assisted living and or assisted living memory care for that client. And I'm not the only person that has input regarding that decision as to where we need to find or what kind of facility we need. It's the family's input because if they're around, they see what's happening with mom. They see that mom's not paying the bills and mom's not doing her laundry and she's not eating well and she's forgetful, or mom and dad live together, but mom's going outside at 11:30 at night. And we've had to call the 911 to find mom walking down the street. So the input from the family, the doctor's office, a lot of pieces need to come together and help me determine what type of facility we're looking for. The next step, if somebody's at home and they have home care and the home care is just not cutting it anymore and they need 24-hour care, which you can get with home care, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I did the math once, and that's the wrong side of my brain, but if you're looking at $20 an hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're gonna have rotating caregivers in the house, and it's gonna cost you a lot of money, which is fine. If that's your option and you have the financial wherewithal to do that, that's fine. As long as there's not a safety factor involved, because just as we just said, everybody wants to stay at home. You want to stay at your home. This is the home that you built. This is your home. We don't want to go live somewhere else. So I don't necessarily push somebody toward facility living right away. But if assisted living is involved, then we take a look at number one, what their needs are medically, physically, that need to be met by that facility. Because facilities vary in the services that they provide within every facility. If you're the person helping somebody find an assisted living facility, go do your homework first. Go visit them, do the sniff test, ask a lot of questions. Assisted living provides care for people that are still rather high functioning but need assistance with a word that I used a few minutes ago, their ADLs, activities of daily living, which is bathing, dressing, grooming, feeding, toileting, transportation, even transferring. If somebody's in a wheelchair and they need help transferring to the dining room table, that's considered assistance with an ADL. And they will get that in the facility 24 hours a day, 7 days a week by a boatload of people that versus being at home, maybe the spouse was doing all that. And in the case of my mom and dad, my dad lost about 50 pounds. He was overwhelmed, he couldn't sleep at night, he didn't know how to cook, my dad never cooked, it was my mom. So the caregiver, it takes a toll on the caregiver immensely to be a caregiver for somebody at home. So all of your ADLs are met in an assisted living facility and non-ADLs. They provide all the meals, they do the housekeeping, they've got buses for transportation, they've got a huge activities program, and it's a great answer for a lot of people that are no longer functioning well at home. And a huge positive thing about assisted living is an example of what you all have here is the camaraderie of being in a community and having people of, now you have a lot of differences, you all come from all different states, I assume, all over the country, but now you're under kind of one umbrella here, and you have a lot of things in common, and there's a lot of activities going on. So I personally have seen so many people flourish in an assisted living facility that were not doing well at home alone with a spouse or at home alone. And they just come back to life, and now they have people to talk to at the dining room table. Then there's assisted living if somebody has memory care issues. An Alzheimer's dementia facility has to have a locked unit or the whole building, if you're familiar with, there's one in Wilmington called Brookdale that the entire facility is a locked Alzheimer's facility. So the residents inside, it's like living in a giant beach house. They can walk around the whole building, and they let them freely go into the dining room, and they go into the library, and they come out in the office. A lot of times the residents are sitting in the administrator's office, and they have outside courtyards that are secured that they can venture out to for safety reasons. And if not, if it's an assisted living facility with a memory care unit, then that unit has locked doors, which is more confining. Obviously, we all want room to roam, especially people with, not everybody, but some people with dementia are fidgeters, and they like to walk a lot and roam, and that's a great answer for them. So assisted living costs, you're looking at private pay or long-term care insurance, which in all the years that I've been doing this, I bet I can count on 10 fingers the number of people that I've known that have had long-term care insurance, because it's evolved now, and I won't speak to it because I'm not very well versed on that, but it was expensive. And now when people are coming to the time in their life that they need it, they're finding that $2,000 isn't covering very much per month for the facility that I need for my wife. That's going to cost $7,500 a month because she needs Alzheimer's care. So assisted living in our area, and I primarily work with clients in New Hanover, Pender, Brunswick counties, and I go beyond. It just requires me to do some investigating into facilities outside of our area. But you're looking at $3,700 in a really basic assisted living facility where you don't need a lot of care. Your level of care is still rather low, up to, don't be shocked, up to $9,000 a month. That's the Cadillac of assisted living memory care, and that comes out of your pocket. Now, hearkening back to the elder law attorney that I work with, that's where she comes into the picture. And if you heard her speak, she talked about that. One of the things that she, and I worked with a couple of elder law attorneys prior to working with Kara, who I've worked with for about 6 years now, always said, and I took this to heart with my mom and dad, don't wait. Don't wait until a crisis comes and you have to make a decision now. If you know if a spouse or a parent or a sibling has a debilitating medical condition or Alzheimer's dementia that you know eventually that person's going to need care in a facility, start planning for that now. Plan for it, not specifically maybe that a facility, but knowing in the back of your mind that we got to pay for that somehow. Where is that going to come from? And working with the attorney, and again, most people don't do this most people are crisis planning at the last minute, but if you know this and you know we've got a couple of years, there's a lot of ways that they can help you save money. If it's a spouse situation, a spouse doesn't have to lose the house. A spouse gets to keep the house and the car, and Medicaid has some pretty stringent numbers that you have to follow, but you don't lose all your money. So many people say we can't do Medicaid because where am I gonna live? I have to live somewhere, and I'm still active in my community at St. James or wherever I live, and I can't go bankrupt lose everything because my spouse needs care. And I will tell you that there's been a couple of clients throughout the years that I've seen walk away from a spouse and ask about getting a divorce. Everybody's different. We don't know, you don't know my relationship with my husband, although I didn't do that. But, and then there are some spouses that would go to the edge and lose everything. But common sense tells us we need to salvage funds and finances for the spouse that's left at home, that stays at home. So, and please interrupt if you have questions. Yes.
Well, when does Medicaid kick in terms of not financially, but a capability of the senior who needs care?
Medicaid, the question is, when does Medicaid kick in? And Medicaid is a program that's a national government program. There are two things that are required for you to receive Medicaid. Number one, you need to have a medical need. Number two, a financial need. So if somebody comes to us and they own their home here in St. James and they've got $1 million in the bank and they've got other investments, don't even bother applying for Medicaid because you're wasting your time, which is a huge undertaking to make a Medicaid application. But if you know that you're going to need that in 5 years, start thinking about it now. Work with somebody because there are ways to save half of that money in the pile over here for this spouse. But Medicaid does not start until the medical need is is there, and the financial need. And I don't want to quote figures on what the financial need is, but again, you can still, if it's a spouse situation, the spouse can still own their home. If somebody comes to us and they're both living on just their Social Security and they are renting a home, they don't have any assets, they don't own any property, chances are that Medicaid application, we will file that, or because the attorneys charge a lot of money to file a Medicaid application, and it's daunting. I've done it for my mom. But if you can do it yourself, Medicaid will kick in right away. So that's kind of a roundabout answer. Yes?
What if the person owns their own house and they're not living in it or house, and they're starting to need help, and they're starting to need extra help?
If somebody lives in their own house that they own and they need extra help,
Yes.
Can they stay in their house?
Or if they wanted to apply for Medicaid because they can see the handwriting on the wall that they're going to need more help, do they have to sell their house? Does
Medicaid,
their asset count towards Medicaid application?
yeah. If there's nobody staying in the house, and again, I'm not the attorney. That's a good attorney question.
Okay.
But Medicaid is going to say that house is an asset, so you need to sell that house, or Kara might say, put it in a trust somewhere, but there's a lot of Medicaid stipulations and a 5-year look-back period for Medicaid. A Medicaid application becomes that thick when you have to pull out 5 years of bank information for somebody. My mom and dad owned a house down in Florida and a mobile home, and they wanted to know what year it was and what was it valued now, and it's a daunting procedure. But if somebody's in their house, they're going to have to use that house as an asset. There's actually been, and there's different thoughts on this, but we've actually sent a couple of clients to meet with somebody to do a reverse mortgage that worked for them.
Another option.
And initially Kara, the attorney that I work with, wasn't really sold on this. I mean, I think a few years ago, it left a lot of bad taste in everybody's mouths, the reverse mortgage thing. But there's some answers for it. It's the answer for some people.
I just want to speak to what you said earlier.
Mhm.
My name's Ellen DeGroot. I'm the membership chairperson. I deal on the front line, so to speak, with our membership in Nest. I see over and over again people not being proactive. They keep their heads in their sand. They know the day is coming when they can't manage by themselves, whether it's a single person or a married couple. And all I can say is thank you all for being here, because it shows that you're interested in planning and doing what Sue is suggesting, which is to be educated, find out what your options are, and to plan for the day, because we're not getting any younger, and the situation is not going to improve, it's going to get worse. That's all I just
Yeah, you're right. I've had many clients throughout the years that not a family member, a neighbor got a hold of the law firm, and they don't have family, and they're in their home, and they shouldn't be. And sometimes the attorney recommends guardianship, so that there's a guardian of the person and possibly of the finances if the person doesn't have the cognitive ability, meaning Alzheimer's or some form of dementia, to handle their money on their own. Then a guardian needs to step in and handle that. Yeah, there's not everybody has a loving family with children around that are willing to help with things or move in with mom and dad. I didn't move in with my mom and dad, I was down the street, but that was close enough. And let me give you my best advice for stress. You go home, get the biggest, fluffiest pillow that you can find, go stand in the closet and scream really loud. My mom, because of the Alzheimer's, and I just kept reminding myself of this. I'm getting off track, I'm sorry. Because I've attended a lot of Alzheimer's caregiver conferences, is that it's not my mom. It's not my mom saying this to me or doing this to me. It's the disease. It still hurt that I would go home and cry and get that pillow out and scream into the closet. But you remember that with somebody, if you're dealing with somebody with Alzheimer's, it's not Betty or it's not your sister, it's the disease. The last couple of years of my mom's life, I was her least favorite person on this planet. And yeah, it hurt at that time, but I understood it. It's not easy to take. Alzheimer's is a terrible disease that you lose somebody one day at a time and takes 10 to 12 years. Okay, I got off track. Yes?
How many years does a person that's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's or some sort of brain disorder, how long do they live?
The question is, how long once somebody is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, how long can you expect somebody to live? Again, I'm not clinical, but I have a lot of years of experience working with this. It depends on when they're diagnosed. It depends on what form of dementia it is, because dementia is like the umbrella under which Alzheimer's falls and Lewy body dementia, and there's vascular dementia. So it depends on when they find it in that person. And the progression varies from person to person, how quickly. With my mom, it was probably 12 years from the time things started, when she put her lipstick on her eyebrows.
There's no medication. There is no medication out.
I can't mention them. Well, there's like 3 or 4 right now that people are using, but there's always a time in that patient's progression of that disease that the family says, okay, we're going to take mom off of that, because it doesn't halt the progression, it
It
slows the
also
progression.
has so many side effects.
Some do. Yep. So it can change. Some people can live 12 years or more with the disease before they,
Is that the average? Guess that an average?
yeah, I would say 10 to 12 from what I have seen throughout the years. Yes,
Do you have a view about continuing care facilities?
yes, yes. Am I running out of time? I'll get to that. So assisted living, there's assisted living and there's assisted living with memory care, and that's, they can be in the same building, or they can be a freestanding building with memory care only, and we do have those in our area. Once you medically get to the point, not you, the patient or the resident at the assisted living facility gets to the point where their medical needs can no longer be met in an assisted living facility, which is very common. If somebody needs a catheter, or they're on a ventilator, or they have kidney disease, they need more care, and that is skilled nursing facility. That's a nursing home. So then we'll transfer somebody, and a lot of times I don't work with people all the time that are coming from home or living with their children. Sometimes it's transferring people from one facility to another and finding the best facility for them based on mainly what their needs are, and that the facility can meet their specific needs there for them. And then they can stay through end of life, because all facilities welcome hospice and palliative care for end of life. Medicare, for the payer source, for skilled nursing, Medicare will pay for it if you're going in for rehab, if you fall and break a hip, if you've ever had a knee replaced and you know you go to rehab, Medicare pays 100% for the first 20 days of your stay there, and then 80% for up to 80 more days, as long as you keep progressing in your recovery and you're showing that you're walking more steps and whatever it is. That applies also to a skilled nursing facility to a point, because then there's people plateau, and then Medicare says we're not covering that anymore. So if people don't pay privately, we can get them qualified for Medicaid. It's much easier to qualify somebody for a skilled nursing facility than assisted living, because as I said earlier, there's 2 qualifications for Medicaid. One of them is medical, and by the time you need skilled nursing, your medical needs are very high, and Medicaid will kick in much faster. Any questions like those can also be answered at Brunswick County social services offices. They can answer those questions, and they have a website that's full of a lot of information. So yes. Yeah, yes. Is the inability to walk considered a medical need? Yes.
So then
If you're confined to a wheelchair, that's one of the ADLs.
So does that mean skilled nursing?
No, not necessarily. If you are confined to a wheelchair, but you need assistance with transferring into a shower, and you need assistance with transferring into bed at night, but you can get yourself dressed with some assistance, because we need help getting the pants up or whatever. But you're still very high functioning cognitively, and you're feeding yourself, and you're doing your own grooming, and then assisted living would be best. If there are other medical factors, a lot of heart conditions, or something that requires a nurse to be, and I'm sorry, that's something I didn't address, a nurse to be in attendance for 24 hours a day. If you need that, that's skilled care. Assisted living has 1 RN required in the building to oversee all of the nursing staff, the CNAs and the LPN, or 2 that's there, depending on the size of the building, how many residents are there. It's 1 RN. So she's not there 24 hours a day. She's there 8 hours a day. She's usually on call. But in a skilled nursing facility, there are several RNs, and there's a medical director that oversees that building. But again, he or she does not live there. they come in like every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday to do rounds with the patients that they need to see. But there are more RNs and more LPNs in a skilled nursing facility because the medical care need is much higher in a skilled facility. So the CCRC, Continuum of Care Retirement Communities, did you guys say that first? Thank you, I remember. And we have a couple of them around here. There's a couple in Wilmington that Brightmoor, near off Shipyard. It's Brightmoor Independent Living, which I didn't discuss. Independent living is basically what you're doing here, but you're all under one roof with an apartment. There's no medical care. If you need medical care, you can contract with a home care agency to come in and help you once a day for 15 minutes or 3 times a week, whatever you need. Independent living, the next step would be the Kempton at this CCRC, which is assisted living. And their assisted living is only low levels of care. The care levels vary from facility to facility. Some people are charged for every level of care that you need, and it's based on the number of nursing hours that you need per day. So if you're at the Kempton, you still have to be pretty high functioning, but they bring your medication. They check on you a couple of times a day, but it's assisted living. And then they have a memory care unit, and they have a skilled facility, and it's all on the same campus. Also up at Davis Healthcare Center, up at Porter's Neck, which is a long ride from here, but that's another CCRC. Plantation Village is associated with, they're not merged, but it's associated somehow with the Davis Healthcare Center there. Plantation Village is private homes and apartments that people live in totally independently, but when you buy into the Plantation Village with a big chunk of money, you're guaranteed as you age in place, you can stay right there and go over to the Champ Davis CCRC to live in their independent assisted living area or memory care or use their rehab or use their skilled center. Does that answer your question?
I have a lot.
Okay. And of course, I mentioned this once that some assisted livings will keep their residents for as long as possible, including to end of life. It depends on the facility and what their practices are, and what they feel they can handle. But the family would have to contract with hospice to come in independently or palliative care. And then when that happens, then the facility's nursing department steps away from that patient and their care. I mean, they don't ignore them because they're there 24/7, but the primary care is provided then by hospice or palliative care. And then we have freestanding hospice care centers here in Brunswick County and Hanover County, and there's a beautiful one. If you've never been there, go for a tour. Don't think of it as depressing. It's outstanding. The level of care that the hospice care centers provide is unbelievable. I had hospice come in with my mom for her end of days and palliative care part of that. And it's another level of care that the facilities have to have a specific number of nursing staff on hand based on what their census is in their building with their patients or residents. So assisted living, one CNA may have 8 residents to take care of during the day. That means get that person up, get that person dressed. Let's make sure that person's at activities, at breakfast, at lunch, make sure that person gets their meds. Let's make sure that person gets their clothes changed when necessary, and then gets ready for bed. And so there's 1 to 8 people. In a skilled facility, that number is much higher with the nursing staff because those patients need a much higher level of care. In palliative care, palliative care differs from hospice in that hospice is end of life, and it's there to provide comfort care only to the patient. Whereas palliative care, with my mom as an example, you never know, only the Lord knows when we're going to leave this earth. And if somebody rallies, then we don't need hospice care. And that's what happened with my mom. We had palliative care in, and with palliative care, if she had, with hospice care, if she had a heart attack, and because she had a DNR in place, we knew we were going to let her go. With palliative care, she's still doing okay, and she wants to be kept alive. We're going to continue to treat things with other medications and make her more comfortable. It's another level of care, and traditionally here in our area, the hospices don't charge. That money comes from grants, and when somebody passes away, there's a lot of donations that are made. Any questions?
I guess, just quickly, I get the sense that having had personal experience that a lot of these places order close on being an apartment or hospital or apartment living. They'll have all kinds of social activities that go with them, depending on which one you select.
Right. The question was about the physical attributes of the different facilities that they're very apartment-like, and that's absolutely right. True, especially in assisted living. Some assisted livings have kitchenettes. They don't encourage you to cook because they want you to come down to the dining room to have the camaraderie at the dining room table with the other people that live in the building. But they have kitchenettes and a little refrigerator and microwave that you can get your own toast or make your own popcorn at night. Some of them are 2-bedroom and they're very nice and they're big, and of course you're going to pay for that. And then there's assisted living where you have a room that you're going to share with another patient and you have a bathroom that you're going to share with somebody. So it really runs the gamut. There's a building, there's 2 of them in Wilmington. There's 2 independent living facilities called the Woods at Holly Tree and Lakeshore Commons. And they're independent living, but a lot of people in there need a lot of care, and they have caregivers that come in and stay with them, or they come in 3-4 times a week. They have a lot of, they don't want to go to an assisted living facility, and they want to stay right there. So somebody comes in and gets them their meds 3 days a week. The Woods at Holly Tree actually has freestanding, they call them cottages, that you have your own entrance and it's like a tiny little house. I don't think Lakeshore Commons has that, not Woods at Holly Tree. But they're very nice. And some assisted livings are like that. The higher level of care that you need, like skilled care and memory care, you don't need all that room. Chances are you don't need that much space around you. You've got a bed, a dresser, a nightstand, a chair for somebody to come and visit with you. And going back to what I started saying about being somebody's best advocate, a lot of times people come to us that they call in. My mom's in the hospital, they're ready to discharge her. This is a good example of waiting till the last minute to do something. Mom's been in the hospital for 2 months, but they didn't call me until yesterday. And now they're going to discharge mom in 3 days. But I don't like the facility that they sent me to. Do I have to send her there? The answer is absolutely not, even if Medicaid's paying for it. Even if we know we're going to a facility that the payer source is going to be Medicaid, you do not have to accept that building. If you walk into a building and you are turned off right away, you don't like what you see, you don't like what you smell, it's depressing, you don't want your sister, your mom, your husband there, walk out and go back to the hospital and say, let's find someplace else. The case managers and social workers at every hospital are overwhelmed with getting heads out of beds. That means getting discharged. Once the hospital says, okay, let's discharge this person, they want them out in 24 hours. So it's a social worker and discharge planner's job to find a facility. And they've got a list, and there's a system, if you've been to your doctor lately, there's a system called Epic, and they put that patient's information into their Epic system, and it goes out to every, if they're looking for a skilled nursing facility, goes out to every SNF within a 25-mile radius, and the facilities that say, yes, we can handle Mrs. Smith's needs, the first one that pops up is the one that the case manager is going to say, here you go, I found a bed for your husband, and it's across the street. But you don't have to take that. I recently had a client that the hospital had to keep mom for 5 or 6 more days, and the hospital fought it, but the husband, who just was a lovely little man, and didn't have really high expectations, said, I can't take my wife there. And I said, I agree, it's not a facility that I would refer our clients to. So it took us 5 days or so to find an acceptable facility that was also closer to his home. He didn't live near the facility that the hospital wanted him to go to. But the hospital understands that if it's not a quote-unquote safe discharge, because the wife couldn't go home with the husband, her care level was too high, he can't lift her, she was bedbound. The hospital has to keep you, they're not going to throw you out on the street. Yes?
My question has to do with the concept of pre-planning. Do most of the independent or assisted living facilities have waiting lists?
Did everybody hear the question? Do the facilities have waiting lists? That changes truly week to week. During COVID, during COVID, when it was hot and heavy, then facilities were not even taking new residents unless they were coming from the hospital, and they had to have COVID tests, and then they would confine them for 2 weeks alone in a private room to make sure that they didn't have COVID and that they weren't going to transmit it to other people. So that changes with the popularity of the facility. There's a facility, and they won't mind me saying this, in Wilmington. It's called Trinity Grove. They have a perpetual waiting list. It's the newest facility in the Wilmington area, one of the newest. And they have a waiting list because everybody wants to go to Trinity Grove. So I don't have an ice cream chance in hell, of getting you into Trinity Grove. Unless you're coming from the hospital because you fell and broke a hip, and you tell me I want to go to Trinity Grove, then magically a bed appears. But usually in memory care, they more than likely will have a waiting list because, and that's not the facility's problem, it's a problem that we have throughout the state of North Carolina, and from what I've heard talking to people in other states, that we don't have enough assisted living memory care beds around as our population ages in place, and we have dementia, within that population. There aren't enough beds available. So yeah, they'll tell you we have a wait list of 8 or 10 people. Just get on the wait list anyway, because it could still only be 2 or 3 months, because people make different options and they stay at home they keep mom at home, or they find another facility somewhere else. Yeah, yes.
Follow up. If you're planning for future care needs for a parent, is it better to consider the location where they're currently living in their own home, or the location where the advocate might live?
There's a couple of ways to look at that. If they move in, if they're really, really ingrained in their facility where they are, they're very active in church, and okay, they're 5 hours from you, but mom and dad want to stay in Goldsboro, and they're very active in their church, and you know that they're going to have church members come and visit them, and you're not going to get up there, maybe not even every week, then that might be a good idea. But think about yourself, if you're the caregiver, if it's your parents, that not to be selfish, but when it came time for us to have to place my mom into a facility because my dad and I couldn't handle her anymore, between the two of us, he was living in her house and I was 3 houses down across the street, Then we had to find a facility, and I said to my dad, I want to go home. And this was home to us. Our house didn't sell, so we moved back into it, brought my dad with us. My dad lived with us, and I found a facility here for my mom. Had we stayed down there, my mom didn't know where she was, not to be mean, and I would have gone crazy, because my life is still up here. Our children were both still living in this area, our son still is, but this was home to us. We'd been here for many years, and I was ingrained, and I had I have a lot of friends, and so it made sense for us to come back up here. And of course I got my dad's blessing and immediately thank him. He said, yes, let's go home. So, was there a question back there?
Yeah, I just said, go ahead.
Oh, if somebody needs your help, but they don't need the lawyer that you work with's help, can they hire you independently?
Yeah, you have to hire me through the attorney's office.
Okay.
But I will tell you this, and Kara's fully aware of this, because it's in my nature. Should you call me, and I can answer your questions and give you help on a phone call, you're not going to get a bill from me, because I'm never going to leave anybody hanging. You know, call me. My cards are over there, they're in here. But if you need my services, then you've got to contract with the attorney's office and hire me through them.
I have a question. I think the answer to the first part will be as soon as possible, but so we don't leave our children with the issues you had to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
What's some best advice about, or how to go about working with our children to start to help them in part of the process, so they know our wishes and desires?
Did everybody hear that question? Most people don't like to have that conversation. My mom and dad were very private people, and I kind of figured out on my own, I think I mentioned this a few minutes ago, my mom was putting her lipstick up on her eyebrows, and I'm like, Mom, what are we doing? And giving things away, and then traveling back and forth down there, it made sense, although it was difficult for us to go down there. My dad didn't ask us, we volunteered. Not every family is like that. Not everybody has family that were flexible enough to be able to do that. But because I am going through this, I've already had this conversation with our kids. I was like, guess what? You're going to pay for it, and you're going to take care of me. Because you saw me, and I didn't say it like that, but they saw us do that with Grandpa and Grandma. After we moved back up here, my mom passed away not quite a year later. My dad's job was to go to that nursing home every day and spend 8 hours with my mom. He got up, he took a shower, he shaved, he got in his car, he had breakfast, got in his car, and he went to Liberty Commons. And he spent his whole day there. After my mom passed away, that's when my dad started to go downhill. That was his life. He died about a year and a half later, heart disease, and he went, I can't stand. He went like that in his bedroom one Sunday morning. And as upsetting as it was, I know I'm getting a little off track, but as upsetting as it was, that was my dad saying, you know what? Look at what Mom went through, my mom went through, and then of course the whole family went through many, many years of suffering through Alzheimer's, because it's not just you suffering alone, it's not just the patient, it's everybody in the extended family. And my dad decided, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm just gonna have heart failure and I'm going. So it took me about a week, and then I said, Dad, I get it, thank you, but it didn't make it any easier. I'm sorry. So he lived with us for several years, and that was something that was difficult too, because my husband and I were empty nesters. Obviously, I'm 67 years old today, actually. Thanks. Actually, last night I did math, and I thought I was already 67. My husband, math's not my strong suit. But I would do that again. I would have my dad live with us while my dad was living with us. And I was his caregiver at the end, because he got emphysema, he was on oxygen, and he was falling a lot. And I brought the PACE program in. The Elder House PACE program was outstanding. because VA was difficult to work with. I didn't discuss VA options, but I had nothing but negative stuff personally when I dealt with the VA for my dad's care.
What did you use?
PACE. It's a program of all-inclusive care for the elderly. It's run through the Elder House program. They do serve part of Brunswick County, but I'm not sure how far out. And I can explain what that program is too. It was outstanding for us. While my dad was living with us, my husband got up in the middle of the night, had orthostatic hypotension, blacked out, fell backwards, broke his neck. So now I'm dealing with my dad. My husband broke his neck. He was in the rehab hospital for 8 weeks. And I'm like, what do I do now? So I went to the closet and I got that pillow and I screamed. I did a lot of screaming. This is 5 years ago that this happened to him, and he's very high function, but he's not working anymore. And he's lost a lot of use of his right side of his body, and but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I'm very, very grateful for all the education and training and stuff that I've had throughout the years, and all the people that I've worked with that have taught me so many things. So many things too. Do you have a question?
Yes, going back to assisted living.
Mhm.
My mother she did the whole thing, 10 years assisted living in a nursing home. Within the assisted living groups here, she went into a brand new facility. You left a deposit, which you would get back when you left. But then about 3 or 4 years after she was there, I get a phone call, oh, we're changing our name. We're going to become the so-and-so. I said, why? Well, she wasn't sure. When I got back, I lived overseas. When I got back, turned out that they had sold it, they said, to another group. That's fine. The cook, they said, wasn't as good, and this wasn't as good, but the facility went on, and she had her nice apartment, so everything was fine. Then another 3 or 4 years, it was sold
again.
And sold again.
Yeah.
Finally, after my mother was put in a nursing home, and I had the power of attorney, I asked for her. We'd now been through at least 4 different groups, and I think they were coming back to the original group when we first went in. And I was dealing with Seattle or many different companies in different areas of the United States.
Let me guess, you didn't get your deposit back.
Well, I did, because I said I would send you all the police reports of when they stole her credit card from under her so-and-so, and the woman just said, fine, we'll send you your refund back.
Yeah, it's very common to have
So
a
it's like a
facility.
racket, is this?
Is it a racket? No, I hate to say this, it's all about money. It's about money. The best facilities, there's always somebody up at corporate that doesn't, not that they don't care about the residents and the patients, but they're looking at the bottom line. And any way that they can save money, that's what they're gonna do. Or if it's not thriving in the area and they get an offer to purchase from another company, then it's sold. Yes, I worked for a building in Wilmington that I wish I could remember all the names. By the time I left that assisted living facility, they were going on their 5th name, and that's when they invited me to look for another job, because they decided they could pay somebody a lot less money to do what I was doing, because I'd been there for almost 5 years, and I was making good money, but they decided we'd bring somebody in and pay him half. But that's fine. That's when I met Andy Olson. Anybody remember Andy Olson? He's retired now, but he's an elder law attorney, and he did a lot of speaking, even here, throughout the years. And I've been working in elder law. It's very common, what you said, to have facilities change. Yes?
I have a similar question. We've been doing due diligence for continuing care facilities.
Mm-hmm.
And my biggest concern is you give them a lot of money up front for a future flow of intangible services. And their contracts are written in a way to shift most of the risk onto the purchaser. how can you sort of get a better balance between assurances that they'll be in distance when you need them and that the risks are fairly shared?
That's a good attorney question, not me, but I think it's a crapshoot from what I've seen. The continuum of care communities, and not all of them, the one that I mentioned first initially, Brightmoor, independent living, the Kempton, the skilled facility, the Commons at Brightmoor, they're a CCRC under one roof. They're owned by Liberty Home Care Group, which is a family in the area, in the Wilmington-Whiteville area, the McNeil family. They have a big umbrella that they own a lot of buildings. They don't require a down payment, but I do understand with Plantation Village, that's a lot of money. And is there proof? And my first question would be, what if I don't even live that long, that I need care over there? What happens to that money? Does my wife get it? Does it go back? That's a good attorney question. And maybe not an elder law attorney, but somebody needs to look over all that paperwork before I would sign in, not to be negative, but before I would move into a community like that.
A follow-up to the question was asked about how we reach out and contract with you. You obviously have a lot of knowledge and experience in this whole business. Is there a network of people like you around that we can all reach out and deal with? Because we obviously don't have the experience of knowing what facilities are good, which ones aren't, whether we need to have continuing care or skilled nursing care. And yeah, you go to your doctor and ask him for guidance, and that's you get about 2 minutes worth of his time, and you finally get to see him.
Well, to answer the first part of your question, as far as I know, I'm the only person in New Hampshire, Pender, Brunswick, Onslow, Columbus counties within our area. Maybe there's somebody up in Raleigh that does what I do. The Cranfield Sumner law offices, they have offices in Raleigh, Wilmington, and Charlotte. I'm the only certified senior advisor that's employed by them. It's not common. I think that they all should employ me, and I should be able to work in, if you call me, I'm not gonna leave you hanging. Let me put it that way. But I will also be the first to tell you, if I can't answer questions for you that I know you need the attorney for, not to try and sell you on something, but I'm gonna lead you toward an attorney, because there's things that you should and shouldn't do walking down that lane with somebody that you're a caregiver for. There's a big issue with Medicaid, with the 5-year look-back period and gifting. And if you're looking at a facility for your mom and your mom's writing checks to the grandkids for $5,000 and she's paying for college, but now mom needs Medicaid to go into a facility next year, Medicaid says, those are all gifts. You either get that money back, which, is that gonna happen? No. You get that money back so that mom can use it to pay for her care, or we start the clock now, and if she gave away $50,000, however many months Medicaid would have spent on her care in a facility divided by that into that $50,000 is when we will start to pay for Medicaid will pay. In that meantime, somebody else has to pay that. So there's gifting and there's transferring of and I know enough just to be dangerous, but transferring of property and that kind of thing. Do you have a question?
Yeah, how do we find somebody like you in another part of the country? Is there a network or some resource that we can start with to find?
I'm a certified senior advisor, but not every certified senior advisor, and that's a national thing, but not every certified senior advisor works in the healthcare industry like I do. There are people that are CSAs that work in the real estate industry, and actually I know a couple because they specialize in working with elderly to sell their property. And there's a couple of people that I know that I have a neighbor that needs to sell her house, and she shouldn't just have some young 28-year-old mom that does real estate on the side help her sell her house. She needs Don in there. But for me, also, if you need, Google geriatric care managers. They will be more clinical than I am, but they will have a lot of resources. They'll know a lot of people in whatever area, geriatric care managers.
How much information, Susan, can we find at the county senior whatever resource?
I'm not as familiar with the Brunswick County Senior Research Center, although I've been in there and that place is so active. It's huge. They have so much stuff going on. I'm not as well spoken with this facility as with New Hanover County, but they are a wealth of knowledge. And if you need something that they don't have the answers for, then they go to people like me. And if I don't have that answer, I'm not gonna let anybody hanging. I'm gonna say, this is who you need to call to get that answer. But they have social workers that work at the senior center. And it's not just about activities, but it's about daily living for the elderly and living your best life possible with all the resources.
I have a question on the financial Medicaid requirements. In the past, my experience has been that it was in other states that the well spouse could keep the house and the car and a relatively small amount of money, and then there was a spend down before the ill spouse could qualify for Medicaid. Is that still required?
Yes. And it does vary state to state. I helped my cousins look for a facility for my uncle in the state of Wisconsin, and that was like speaking a whole other language. They didn't even call it Medicaid, there is some other program. But in the state of North Carolina, the attorney will draw a circle for you and put a line down the middle. Outside of that circle is your house and your car. That's not considered. All the other monies go into that pot. But the spouse that's staying home gets to keep this money only to a certain point. I want to say $250,000.
3 years ago in Arizona, it was like 119. So.
Yeah, I think it's higher. Maybe it's 230. On the other side, the spouse that needs a facility has to spend all of their share of that money, their assets, down to $2,000. Then you put in the Medicaid application, not before that.
I know in Arizona there was a way of working around that, but it was working with an elder attorney for 5 months of paperwork.
Yeah.
To qualify my dad for Medicaid for long-term care.
Yeah. Yes. The people, like I said, people come to us mostly in crisis planning. They don't. Well, who wants to think about it? You know, if because I didn't remember how old I was last night, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be getting Alzheimer's in the years to come. But if my husband's worried about it, then maybe he needs to be talking to somebody. But most people come to us in crisis mode because Betty can no longer take care of Bob at home. It's too much. He weighs 225 pounds. She's 106 pounds. Soaking wet. She can't lift him up. She can't get him in the shower. He's becoming combative. What do we do now? How are we going to pay for it? And when they sit down with us in our conference room, and they learn the stark reality of what this is going to cost. And yes, because you have the money and you have the financial wherewithal right now, that you're going to pay for a good number of years. But most people come in crisis mode. And then the first thing that we tell them is, the first thing that they need to do is have me come in, jump into place. Let's get Bob placed into a facility, because then that's going to free up your brain, let you think clearly, to work with Kara to gather all this stuff together. And we know we've got several years of private pay before we're going to even be considering Medicaid. So we have to pay somewhere. Let's find Bob a good facility now to be well taken care of. Because, and I tell everybody this, if you're a caregiver for somebody, whether it's Alzheimer's, dementia, or whatever it is at home, you're doing the job that a whole team of people in a facility do. Again, not that I'm trying to drive people into facilities versus staying at home, but you're doing a job 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, nonstop, that a whole team of people do in a facility. And you can then, again, become the spouse and go and visit and have your life and go play tennis again, or go to your art class, or whatever it is that you couldn't do before. You couldn't even get out to walk the dog because Bob liked to walk out in the backyard without pants.
You mentioned sniff test.
Mm-hmm.
What would you be looking for? What tips would you give us to be looking for like
The sniff test, and I meant like, if you walk into a facility, and it's really sad, but this is true, and primarily the patients have a payer source of Medicaid, that means that facility is getting about, I shouldn't really exactly say, they're getting a small pittance per month from the government to take care of your loved one versus a facility where somebody's paying privately at $6,000 a month. So that means that when they go to hire staff and they go to buy food and they go to buy fancy decorations for the walls and to buy new furniture, the money's not there to care for it. The money's not there for new bedding. The money's not there for new mattress. The money's not there for lots of things. So those facilities become rapidly go downhill. That doesn't mean that there's not good facilities out there that are mostly Medicaid. They can be. But if you walk in and it smells pretty funky to you, if it's a one-time thing, that's different, because accidents happen. We clean it up, we move on with life. But if you walk in again, or if you walk in again 3 times, because now you know somebody that's living there, you're going to go visit them, and it's dirty and it smells and people aren't being attended to, just walk away, because you have the option of finding somewhere else. Does that answer your question?
I just wanted to share something, not a question, but a resource. Quite a number of the international au pair agencies that place nannies in America also place eldercare au pairs, as it were. I'm from South Africa, and a lot of youngsters come over on it. It's called an exchange program. It's a lot cheaper than paying for a full-time care here because it's considered an exchange program. So you get them for a maximum of 2 years. And generally really nice kids, very, very well mated, and become part of the family in many ways.
I wasn't aware of that. The home care agencies that I would refer people to, and again, I personally know the owners of the agencies and their policies and stuff, I'm very comfortable with. If you hire a home care agency, make sure that they're doing background checks on anybody that they hire. I worked for a home care agency for a short time, and we did a background check on a woman that came in. She had 21 pages that came into us. I was like, well, we can't hire you, but hopefully you can get a job at McDonald's. But they need to be selective. They need to do background checks. Their people are bonded. Thefts do occur. Even people are tempted, and right or wrong, that happens. The negative thing about somebody that needs home care 24 hours a day is, unlike an au pair that's going to live with you, which sounds outstanding, 24 hours a day means you've got at least 3 caregivers rotating in and out of your house or mom's house. And if you live in another state, are you comfortable with that? You know the jewelry that mom has. And yes, they're bonded and they're insured, but things happen.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned on the sniff test, but what kind of questions do I go in if I'm looking for a facility? What kind of questions do I ask? How many nurses are working with, how many patients to one nurse? What kind of questions do I ask?
That question is answered by the state. The state of North Carolina dictates to a facility, and they'll be fined if they don't have the right staffing. They come in, I think with assisted living, they come in twice a year to do audits, and they look at everything. They look at all their nursing stats, they look at all their books.
For a facility, for your father,
Mm-hmm.
all right, or your mom, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What kind, I'm gonna compare this one and this one. What kind of question am I gonna ask? You know, which one's better?
Go with your gut feeling. Yep. First of all, if you call somewhere and you're going to make an appointment and they don't call you back, it's 3 days later, and you got to call again. You know what? I check those people off. But if you find somebody that's very friendly up front and open with you and honest, and they're gonna give you an hour and a half or 2 hours of your time, whatever you need to go in there and spend that time with you, take a tour. Have them walk you around the whole building. You can peek in the kitchen, you can go into the activities room, they always have a room that's set up as like a hotel room. But that's another thing I didn't mention, respite care, but they'll give you a whole tour of the facility and sit down and look at pricing and stuff, then take it all home and absorb it, and which one you have the gut feeling for.
We're almost at 4:30. I don't want to cut questions off, but I do want to be, again, cognizant of the time. Did you want to stay? Are there a lot of questions?
If you have questions, I'm fine to stay.
Okay, well, if people want to stay, that's great. If some of you want to leave, I just want to make a little commercial for Nest. Our final presentation of this season until we start again in the fall is on May 31st, also at 3 p.m. Senior fraud schemes and how to avoid them. So May 31st, 3 o'clock, back here. So again, people can stay if they want to stay and you're okay with it.
And I am, I have a lot of information and I like to talk, so call me if you have questions. But I have a lot of
information on the side.
I have a lot of resources at my fingertips that, if I can't help you, I know who to send you to. On May 6th at Winter Park Baptist Church on Riceville Avenue in Wilmington, and I have nothing to do with this, but this is an excellent, because of COVID, they haven't done this for 2.5 years. They have a Wilmington Caregiver Conference coming up, and if you're a caregiver for somebody, whether it's somebody that's with or without Alzheimer's, but you're the caregiver, look this up. It's at Friday, May 6th, so it's next week. It's excellent. They run an excellent conference. They have a lot of speakers and usually there's a lot of tears. And if you are a caregiver, try and take time to yourself and join a caregiver group. People would always tell me that. I'm like, I don't have time for a caregiver group. But again, thank you very much for.
Thank you, Susan.